Harrison Price for Wednesday, January 8th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the historic Wall Center in downtown Vancouver. In this program, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sekeres alongside a klutzy Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches and conducting things alongside intern Nick Hauka, who I will be calling Coach. He is a product of New West. He played for Farhan at New West, and now he's coaching at New West. Farhan, very proud.
Wow. Why am I klutzy?
Was there not a spill in the Whistler parking lot recently?
Oh,
did you break a hip? Because you're of that age now where we have
almost
to
broke my
about.
shoulder though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you recovered?
Yes.
Good.
Almost cried.
I too am klutzy. Carmen tells me she has never encountered anyone who has as many potential slips as I do. The other day, just walking around the apartment, I guess she had washed the floors. There was a little throw carpet on top of where it was damn near went ass over tea kettle. But I usually catch myself, but, still a little bit of residual athleticism. I'm sure once I get to your age, I will no longer be catching them.
Physical klutziness, maybe, but I don't spill things. I'm not a big spiller. I'm not
I can be spilly as well.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Didn't see
just
that
all
coming.
around klutz.
Okay.
Surrey Mitsubishi poll question today. Are injuries a valid excuse for this Canucks season? Yes or no? You can vote at the Sekeres and Price X or YouTube accounts. This poll question from Blake Price, poll question Genie. So you go ahead and take first crack at it.
Well, I think it's easy to point to a team that, and not to go into our Monday chat, I think it's easy to point to a team that's still in the playoff picture, above the playoff bar, and has had all these injuries and say, hey, they get these guys back, they're going to be way better. Except that we've seen this team healthy for small stretches, at least this season. And you know what? When you've got one or two injuries, I don't think you're an injury-riddled team at that point. Everybody's got one or two. I think at times the Canucks have been overloaded with injuries. But we've seen them down to, hey, in the early part of the season, it was just Demko. And Lankin was playing out of his mind. So we saw what that looked like. And we still had criticisms of the team. We still thought, they need another defenseman. They need to be better defensively. These wingers that they brought in, not all of them are really firing on all cylinders. In fact, really just one is. So,
well, when you say one, you mean
two, I guess. DeBrusk and Sherwood at that point.
I was going to say, Sherwood has been awesome, but
he's quieted down.
He's very, very quiet. Very, very quiet. In fact, Sherwood has 5 pointless games here. Sherwood has one goal in his last 9, 2 points in that span since the hat trick against Colorado.
So I'll finish by saying I understand the temptation to say yes. I understand it.
So do I.
But on the big picture, I think you still have to say no.
I hate when we agree this much, but I'm with you on just about tip to tail on that, virtually every syllable. Would their record be better if Demko hadn't missed 2 months? If JT didn't miss 10 games, although that's not really injuries, that's leave of absence. If Pettersson and Hughes had missed a handful, Brock, Dakota Joshua, you got the guy from last year at the beginning. Yeah, of course, I think so. But as you note, injuries happen to every team. Like last year was the aberration, everybody. I think we know that. And then secondly, like that blue line beyond Hughes and when Hronek is there is horrific. You are getting middling production, if that, from a number. Like, you were counting on Miller for more than what he's delivered. You were counting on Pettersson for more than what he's delivered. You were certainly counting on more from Nils Höglander, not to mention Joshua. So you have 4 forwards who are below expectations on the year. And then Susie and Myers have taken a step back too, right?
Yeah.
Like, Susie and Myers were better last year.
Susie more than Myers, but yes.
Yeah. So, when you sit there and can point to 6 skaters, a full third of your nightly allotment, and say playing below potential, well,
probably a bigger factor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Then I'm not sure that you can lean on injuries as the biggest crutch. So I voted no as well.
And there's also the gray area of, hey, Dakota Joshua's now healthy, but he's not himself because of, in this case, illness, not injury, but you know what I mean. Because of injury, he's not himself. So they get the physical player back, but he's not playing like Dakota Joshua. So what category does that even fall into?
Tell me about your Outlander, your 2024 Outlander PHEV.
Oh, let me count the ways. I honestly, I kind of forget the ritual of the gas station.
Do you?
Like, I have to remember each time, because I always fill up the electricity on the right side of the vehicle.
Yes.
I do have to every 3 months when I'm at the gas station, be like, where do I fill this sucker up again? Oh yeah, left side for gas.
Left side. You got to hit the fuel latch switch.
And I forget that every time, because you're there so damn infrequently.
And we've been telling you, there is still a $5,000 rebate, government rebate, on these 2024 Outlander PHEV hybrid vehicles. And there may well be now, given what's going on or what isn't going on with Parliament through March.
Get away, kid.
But the day is coming, I think, where that rebate will not be so. So get it while you can. Go see our friend Daniel at Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey. You're online at surreymitsubishi.ca. Top story today brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, and Foolish Winery. Filip Hronek, remember him? And boy, what welcome news here, too. Mm-hmm. Was it earlier in the week? Last week, I thought I saw IMAX say still 3 weeks away. He's on a conditioning stint assigned there this year, or today, for 10 days or 3 games with the possibility of an extension. Is that?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think it means?
Well, you were telling me the Abbotsford Canucks play 2 games this weekend, then Tuesday.
Yeah, and back-to-back both times. Friday, Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
You don't think he's going to play back-to-backs?
No, so it's one of each of those pairs.
Okay.
If he plays. I mean,
and then does that get you?
I mean, there's a possibility he just goes down to practice.
Okay.
Because they're not here.
When would be the 5th game then? Would that be next weekend? Not this coming one, but next weekend? Would he be able to, let's say he does play, get a 3rd game in and last
Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday.
Yeah.
And all this is at home. So, again, he doesn't have to get on a plane or a bus or anything here. The Abbey Canucks are here from January 10th to January 24th. So, yeah, it's a pro practice. Maybe he can dabble with some games. But I think we can make the leap here that even if he was just practicing with the team and used up all 10 days, I mean, it's not going to be any more than the 8 weeks that December 1st is when it came out. So 4.5 weeks of December in your back pocket, and you've got a week and a half of, so we're at 6 weeks right now. It's not going to be more than 8 weeks for Filip Hronek.
Which is great news.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking more along the lines, and when the injury first happened, that you were looking at him probably out until the end of January. Maybe he plays a handful of games before the season pauses.
Well, the Amazon broadcast even said February or March for Hronek, and I was like, what?
I think they may have just gotten that wrong. The season pauses February 10th for the Four Nations tournament. So I was thinking, boy, if he could get 5 games in before that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Because when you miss as much time as Filip Hronek is going to wind up missing, you play the first game on adrenaline, right? And then typically games 2, 3, and 4 are a little bit more of an acclimatizing exercise. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking, maybe you could get through all of that before the Four Nations, and then be really ready to go coming out of it, which you'd have to think be a good break for him. Boy, you'd have fresh legs because it is a shoulder injury, and he's been skating. But no, that'd be extraordinary if you get him in mid-January.
It's a huge bonus, and I think you see even if he's not the 50-point defenseman that he was on pace for the first half of last year, if he's not that, you see just, and I know you'll be tempted, and I think you've been of the pro split them up.
Well,
but
I was pro split them up when the bottom 2 pairs were sucking as bad as they were sucking.
Yeah.
I like them together when you can count on competency with your, at very least, second pair, if not both pairs. I think both pairs might be too big of an ask. But if Myers and Soucy were playing at last year's level, then I would be happy to keep them together. When Humpty Dumpty was falling down there.
Well, Humpty Dumpty's still pretty down. I mean, the depth is not there defensively. I'm half of mine to when he comes back, maybe not day one, but are you just better off playing 26 minutes a night with those two together and knowing that for 26 minutes a night, you're in really good shape?
Just looking at the schedule, so let's give him his full 10 days down there, Blake, which means the home game on the 18th against Edmonton, probably a little early. So let's drop him in on the 21st against Buffalo here at home. You got 6 more days or 6 more games in the month of January. And then you got 4 games in early February before you break. That gets him 10 games before the season pause. That would be awesome. Even if it's a little later. Let's say he's not ready and you say he gets sent out on the road trip. Last week of January, folks, they're in St. Louis, Nashville, and Dallas on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So if he gets sent out on that trip and then can play the 4 games, that's still 7 games. That's still excellent.
And maybe he'll get a chance while he's down on the farm in Abbotsford to play alongside newly named AHL All-Star defenseman Elias Pettersson. D. Petey is an AHL All-Star.
Good for him.
30 games into his career.
At least one Elias Pettersson will be an All-Star this year. Elias, I know. What are our friends at Yellow Dog up to?
Lots to discuss there. And they want to remind you that the Play Dead is taking its opportunity in the spotlight. You know we love the Play Dead. Big Bang and IPA. If that's your pick, the 4-packs, the tall cans, on special for the month of January. Go check them out at your favorite private or government liquor stores.
I want to talk about Thatcher Demko here for a moment. And Rick Tocchet says he's getting close. Not going to back up tonight. Is that a fait accompli?
I don't know about backing up. He kind of left that vague. He's not starting for sure.
We have not seen a roster move with Arturs. She loves. One would anticipate that will happen.
Is it needed? Do they have 23 on the roster right now? They may be able to get by with him.
Well, on cap space alone, why wouldn't you just send him now?
There's that.
So we haven't seen an Arturs-Sheloff transaction. So until then, I would suspect that Thatcher Demko will not be in uniform. But Steve Valiquette, the former NHL goaltender, he of Clearsight Analytics, this is the goaltending analytics site that everybody in the industry considers best in class. Valiquette was on the Nick Kyprios show yesterday, and he offered this. And again, this is from as good a goaltending mind as is out there, with all due respect, of course, to our friend Kevin Woodley. Quote, His about to make a save stance is certainly more narrow.
Mm-hmm. So
as much as 8 inches more narrow. He's trying to stop the puck with a new stance. Good luck with that. It's throwing him off. I think it's going to be a long road for him. Valaket offers that he has given up 7 bad goals this year by Clearsight Analytics count. He gave up 10 all of last season. That is not the most comforting news on Thatcher Demko. And I saw that IMAC talk to him today, and we're going to get to a couple of the things that Thatcher said there. But none of it had to do with the narrowing of the stance and the changing and whether or not that's related to the popliteus muscle knee injury that he was battling back from. But that didn't strike me as very comforting. Here's Demko on returning from the injury to Ian McIntyre, quote, "This is something I haven't really done before. It's a new path, a new challenge. In some ways, it's difficult to kind of put into words. It's certainly not like a tangible thing where you can kind of pinpoint it, but it feels like all the pieces are there. I'm ready to kind of get back to how I was last year. I don't have a doubt that I'll be able to do that." And I don't know if when he says, "I'm ready to get back to how I was last year," whether that means going back to the wider stance or whether that's more generic.
Well, that's what I wonder. A, is it purposeful, or is it a protection thing that's subconscious? Is he just setting up more narrowly subconsciously because he's worried if he goes wider, it's going to hurt? And then maybe that will just remedy itself as he gets more comfortable and has had more reps. Or even if it is purposeful, let's say that it is a strategy to reduce some sort of strain. Again, though, as he gets more comfortable, as he gets better, does it just start to creep wider and wider and get back to where it was? And until we've got those answers, I'm not going to get too panicked about it. He's been able to manage, and the bad goals have certainly been there. But I'd love to see them individually because the defensive coverage has just been so terrible in front of them that I think both of them deserve a break on their statistics.
Well, I mean,
Lankinen the other night was as swimmy as we have ever seen Kevin Lankinen. I've never seen Kevin Lankinen.
Their expected goals against is still pretty low, though, Blake. Like, for the most part, the team defense over the course of the season has been good, but yes, you can certainly pick out periods, games where it has been atrocious.
And Demko's also managed the game to the point where, again, he's only lost 1 game in regulation of the games that he has started of the 7 that he's ground out points.
Yes. Boy, both goaltenders have been grinders this year.
Yeah.
Huh? As for leaving that game, help me out. Which game did he leave against? Who did he leave against again?
Oh, most recently? 3-4 games back?
Yeah, and we'll get to it. He confirmed what Tocchet says. It was back spasms that flared up. He told...
Seattle?
He told McIntyre, a lot of times you feel something that you don't feel you can play through, and then kind of the adrenaline kicks in, the meds kick in, it goes away. But in this case, unfortunately, it just kept getting worse. If I'm in pain, but I can do everything I need to do to make saves, it doesn't matter. But in this case, I felt coming out was a better option than trying to finish the game.
Which is a great answer. Like, that's the answer Canuck fans will want to hear.
Yes.
That under any other circumstance, I'm probably grinding that game out. But given what's happened, a little more sensitive to just taking care of person, I'm going to come out of that game. Mm-hmm. I like that answer. If that's the truth, then I like that answer.
And it was the 4-3 shootout win over Seattle that he left because, of course, Lankinen came in relief and
got the win.
Got the W. Pettersson and Forbert are game time decisions tonight, according to Rick Tocchet. Poor Derek Forbert. The hits just keep on coming. Of course, after tonight, they have a back-to-back Friday in Carolina, then Saturday in Toronto, where I'm going to guess they feel pretty good that Toronto is the second of the back-to-back, which means no morning skate, which means you don't have to make anybody available to that media corps.
That's
given
true.
What is going on with the Vancouver Canucks this season. And more recently, of course, with Miller and Pettersson, which we're going to get into here in a second. But we'll see about Petey. You have to think if it's not tonight, it's going to be Friday in Carolina. Quinn Hughes is back. Couple things I want to get to here. First of all, good account to follow out there, Dr. Gruel. He looks at hockey injuries and he assesses them from Dr. Harjaz Gruel at Harjaz_Gruel, BC guy. He tweets, considering the Canucks initially reported Hughes' injury as week to week, and then he came back earlier than that, I would suspect it's a broken hand bone that doesn't need surgery and can be played with. The padding, it's not a brace, it's padding, according to Dr. Gruel, is to prevent further trauma. So, yeah, Tocchet, everyone was talking about Hughes as a multi-week injury. He came back sooner than that. I think that's probably pretty fair assessment from the outside looking in. And not only did he play with it, he had a couple of points against the Montreal Canadiens. And that has Noah Strang of the Daily Hive in Offside doing the math here. 44 points in 35 games so far this season. It's a 1.26 points per game average.
0.06 better than Makar.
And Noah looks back and goes, the last defenseman to match that point per game total, Paul Coffey during the 94-95 season when Coffey was not an Oiler but a Penguin with all of those, well,
he had a rough.
Yager.
Coffey had a rough.
Did he ever, huh? It's almost like he knew what was best for his career.
Exactly.
Anyways, that was an extraordinary offensive team. And Coffey, of course, an extraordinary offensive defenseman. The moral of the story here that I think the Norris candidacy was not hurt in the slightest by the brief absence. Actually, let me correct myself. That was Coffey with the Detroit Red Wings in 94-95, but also a pretty
there's some good pieces there too.
Good team.
That
was over just 45 games.
The one risk for him here with regards to the Norris is, again, I don't think he's going to be shooting, not slap shots for the next couple of weeks. And the assists alone tend to be a little less sexier to the voters. Mm-hmm. They like to see that minimum 15 to 20 goals out of their Norris Trophy winner, I think. Mm-hmm. And you wonder, can he do it with the wristers from the point? And even just the wristers, period, depending on what it feels like to load up a wrister with that hand. But I think the goals might suffer just a little bit. Obviously, he can still dish, but the assist might have to float him for the time being, or you'll get the odd redirection on a wrist shot, and you'll get a couple of goals. But I think that might suffer just a little bit.
Well, I also think the rationale for Quinn Hughes as Hart Trophy candidate, I think that's going to land pretty well with Norris voters as the season goes along if Quinn keeps this up. And, of course, the rationale for Quinn as Hart Trophy is if it is adjudged most valuable to his team, gosh, how many guys are more valuable to their team, particularly within the confines of this season and what has been going on with the Vancouver Canucks. The Vezina finalist goalie misses 2 months. The star centerman takes a 10-game leave of absence. The other star centerman gets hurt. So you take a look at this disjointed Vancouver Canucks season, which has had so many turns, so many curveballs, so much adversity.
Yeah.
And yet the constant there is the brilliance of Quinn Hughes night after night after night after night. And so I do think, because remember, Blake, last year we all thought it was close. We all thought that Quinn Hughes was going to have to go over and above to get the nod over Cale Makar.
Think about Henrik Sedin's Hart Trophy campaign. What happened? No Daniel for 20 games.
Right. A very good point. Very good
You know,
point.
it's when things like that clobber voters over the head.
Exactly.
Of like, he did that without the piece?
And that's a good way of putting it. Clobber voters over the head. Well, I think last year, Canuck Nation, we were pretty successful in making the case for Hughes because he destroyed Makar in the Norris voting. It wasn't close. We thought it would be nip and tuck. It was a runaway. So, you know, outside of the preseason lists, prognostications, who's going to win the Norris, who are your top defensemen, where he still may not be getting his full due. I think for the most part, the Quinn Hughes case has been stated, has been made, and has been received by the jury. And I do think that is going to help him in Norris Trophy voting again this year. Again, particularly given the fact that he's had a heavier lift this year. Last year, a lot of things went very well for Quinn Hughes, the Vancouver Canucks, and Quinn Hughes' teammates. This year, not as much. And yet still, there is Hughes. There is always Quinn Hughes. Okay. Now, on to the latest trade rumblings. And you're going to have to edify me here because there's even some things that have broken since we started the show. Chris Johnson of The Athletic and TSN. JT Miller and Elias Pettersson are atop his trade board. We told you yesterday the Daily Faceoff, Frank Cervelli had Pettersson at number 25. Frank continues to argue. Oh, my goodness. Look who is in the window there.
Oh, my goodness.
Former president
There's a
and
solidarity
the GM.
beard here.
Nick, do you want to go out in the lobby and grab that guy? I believe his name is Gillis, Mike Gillis. We'll bring him in
pretty
here.
funny.
He can sit on down.
There was a day where I thought that Mike Gillis would bang on our window.
Yeah, exactly.
But not in that way.
Yeah. So CJ has him atop the trade board, both of them. He says Vancouver is gauging the marketplace, that they're more serious about moving Elias Pettersson. Multiple teams are interested, and he wonders about whether or not Carolina would get re-engaged there. All of them interesting shouts.
Yeah, the report out of Montreal, and it was out of Montreal about the Bruins, was a vague one, where by the end of the article, they're even arguing against themselves to the point of, but how do they make the salaries work? Mm-hmm. You know, there's pieces there, but how do they make the salaries work? We might need one of you to run in here and change the cameras so that we can see our subject.
That's right. We're going to have to do all of this on the fly.
We can do a herky-jerky camera moving.
Yeah,
here, guys.
exactly.
Mike, come on in. You make
What's that? Are we making the guest seats lower than ours so that we appear?
Yeah,
yes, that is one of our tactics.
You're looking very stylish, sir.
Yes.
Good to see you.
Mm-hmm. Former president and general manager of the Vancouver Canucks. What a pleasant surprise. What brings you to Wall Center?
I was actually doing a podcast about women's hockey.
Oh, were you?
Yeah. There's a big game tonight. And,
right.
Spencer represents about 25 of these great young female athletes.
Right.
We were doing a podcast.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to the game.
I'm going to the game.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, your daughters.
My two younger daughters have played. Only one remains playing, but yeah, she'll be there with her team. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what's new?
What's new? Well, my golf handicap is getting reasonable.
Is it?
And doing a lot of fly fishing for steelhead.
Oh, wow.
And cycling. And with a group trying to buy a team in Switzerland.
Oh, really?
So,
Why Switzerland?
Well, the hockey's really good. It's underdeveloped, and it's a great country to visit, great country to have a investment in.
Mm-hmm. I missed you in Davos this year.
Yeah, he was in
Davos.
Davos.
At the Spengler this year.
You?
Yes.
Well, you saw it. And, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
the fans are incredibly passionate, and this group came to me about 2 months ago to assist them in evaluating it, and I just began to like it so much that I'm going to get involved, and we're going to see if we can do something.
Mm-hmm. Just saying your handicap's getting better?
Yeah.
At your age?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
I know.
An age joke.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
Cutting.
why.
I'm the
That's why
youngest
I was
guy
so
on the
eager
deck.
to come in here and see you guys. All I can do is get
Attaboy.
criticized.
No. We went through years of that.
Well, yeah, we might as well jump right back in. Huh? It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was.
Actually, parts of it were a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, let's not forget. Like, we had great fun there for a lot of time. There were a few times that weren't as fun.
We have to ask you because there's been I don't know how much you've kept up. There's been some drama around this Canucks team this year. Mm-hmm. Just vaguely, even if you haven't been keeping up. Would you have any advice? Not that Jim Rutherford would be calling you for advice, but just casually, how do you deal with drama? Because I think both you and Lawrence have said, if we had a second go at it, we'd address the drama a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. They are dealing with drama, and I think they've done okay with it from their messaging standpoint. Not a ton of criticism, but do you have any sort of empathy for what they're going through, given what they're dealing with this year?
Empathy, no.
Comes
Comes
with the gig, right?
One of the things
you
learned,
you signed up for.
Yeah, was that you had to build leadership within that room. You don't presume that there's leaders, and as you guys both know, when I arrived, there was lots of criticism around Daniel and Henrik, and the team had been dominated by a few older players, and there were a lot of skeptics around whether they could be real leaders. And when we made the decision that they were going to be the leaders of the team, and we were going to stick with them, and we were going to get them signed, we tried to put in place a number of support systems for them, so that they had an open door to people that could help them with perspective. And the one thing we realized, and I think we did pretty well at, was we understood when there was a problem as soon as it was happening, because the players were very open with us. And there were times where you couldn't let them try and handle it themselves. You had to get involved, and you had to participate in finding the solution. And I think in this circumstance, and I don't know a lot about it, but the one thing that appears to have happened is this has festered over an extended period of time. And, maybe you wouldn't be successful intervening, but that's what I would have done. And I'm sure these guys did things or were doing things, trying things, but I would have done everything in my power not to get it beyond a certain point. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I'm proud of that we did well was we had a really good relationship with our players. So when there was an issue, and they did come to us about different players that were an issue, and they realized that the team was the most profound thing. No one was bigger than the organization or the team. And when they came to us with a problem, they knew we would be not only empathetic in dealing with it, but deal with it. And that's how that happened on a few occasions.
Miller has a no-move clause. Probably will hamper the market for him.
You know what that's like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pettersson's 5 years younger, but on the bigger contract with the no-move kicking in. Miller has thus far proven to be a better playoff performer. What says you with regards to if you had to make a break? And when do you know that you just can't go forward with two personalities that don't that clash as seemingly as much as they do?
Well, it appears like they've hit that point. But, Pettersson for me is a premier player. I just think he's got so much upside. And if surrounded with the right people and the right environment, I think he's a player you build around. He's at the right age. He's just entering what I would consider the primary years of his career if he doesn't get injured. And he would be a focal point on trying to figure out how to make this work for him.
Yeah. So, then, how do you deal with a guy with a no-move clause?
Well, we had one of those. And
yes.
And
you made the trade.
We ultimately made a trade,
yeah.
But it did come with a lot of drama and a lot of difficulties. Mm-hmm. There are ways to deal with it. We weren't prepared to go as far as nuclear to deal with it because we had so much respect for Roberto, and we weren't going to do that. But there are ways, and I guess they'll have that choice.
Did you guys go out and get trades in place for him and then go to him and present the trades, or did you go to Roberto first and say, where would you be willing to move, and then go out and try
People wonder
to make
about that process, yes.
the deals with
Well, there were a number of different scenarios that happened over time, so both of those things were done.
wow.
So, it wasn't.
So
There was one particular trade that we could have made to a location where Roberto simply refused to go, and
was that Toronto?
I'm not going to say.
Oh gosh, all these
You
years
can
later.
ask him.
Okay.
Ask him.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it was his decision. not
Fair
mine.
enough. Fair enough.
He didn't want to go there, and we respected that. It got turned into a bunch of nonsense by the team that was on the other side of it, and that created more problems and dilemma that everyone could have done without.
Yeah.
But anyway, he ultimately got traded to the location he wanted to go to for personal reasons. It worked out well for him. I'm very pleased for him that he got a chance to win a cup. Roberto was nothing but a great teammate and a great employee, I guess, for me, or player for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't say a negative thing about him. Like, he had his reasons. He was a great player for the Vancouver Canucks, and that's undeniable.
JT Miller wouldn't get the same report card, I wouldn't think, from everybody. Some people, I'm sure he would get the same report card, but it wouldn't be unanimous. So when you consider that, and the fact that you, I think as an agent, were very sensitive to, hey, this guy's got a no move. He earned that. Have to respect that. So it's a very sensitive issue to work around that. Mm-hmm. Does that become an issue here for the Canucks too, of wanting to protect franchise integrity by asking a guy with a no move?
Well, there are certain circumstances that transcend that.
Right.
Like, I mean, you get to a certain point where your team becomes dysfunctional, and
It's untenable.
you're penalizing everybody.
Yeah.
So that takes on a whole new element of consideration. And, we were never at that point with Roberto.
Right.
Roberto was a functioning member, a great teammate. He wasn't a problem. He wasn't making himself a problem ever. And so we didn't have that circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
I think once it reaches a point, anything that reaches a point where it's so detrimental to team performance and team integrity, you got to do things differently.
Yeah.
You got to figure it out.
And of course, it wound up being a very good trade for the Vancouver Canucks. Jacob Markstrom came in here and played exceptionally well, and went on to Calgary and now New Jersey, and realized all his potential as the best young goaltender in the world.
Yeah.
As he
Well, one
was at
thing
one
about
point.
him, I got to tell you, is when we were doing that, no one had really that level of comfort or that level of confidence that Jacob would become that player, except Rolly Melanson.
Yeah.
And Rolly Melanson was adamant that this guy is a player. Put him in the right environment, give him the right technique, he'll be a star. And when you have that level of confidence from a guy that you have a lot of confidence in his opinion, it makes it a lot easier to do those things.
Yeah.
Light Engine in our chat is saying, make sure you tell him we all say hi to him, please.
Yeah.
So our viewers are saying hi back to you.
Oh,
Mike,
wow.
So thanks for stopping by.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you guys. I mean, you're so incredibly important in this marketplace that,
oh my God.
I'm
dripping with sarcasm.
really? Oh, no. Not
He
me.
banged on the window here at the lower lobby level of the Wall Center, and so
I didn't even know you guys were in here.
Oh,
It was
really?
great. Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Well,
I see beard. You've gone back to beard here.
Well, it gives me a minute to get away from the Canucks lunacy, when you're in Whole Foods and someone.
okay.
I have about a minute where there's this question.
There's a
Double clutch. Yeah.
Is that him? Is that really him? I can't really tell. Nah, he doesn't have a beard.
Yeah.
It's not a solidarity beard. though.
Anyway, it's no, it's not that.
Okay. Good to see you again.
Good
Thanks
to
for
see you
making
guys.
time.
Thanks for having.
for
Stop by anytime you're here at the Wall Center. That's Mike Gillis, former president.
Make Gilman answer a few more difficult.
Okay. We have to ask Gilman more difficult questions. See, he does watch. He does.
He knows Gilman's on this show.
Gilman will be back next Wednesday, as a matter of fact. So, Blake's going to talk to Mike for a second. That's former president, general manager of the Vancouver Canucks. Michael D. Gillis. Okay, we were on the
live show, folks. Live show.
And thank you to Mike and intern Nick for getting it turned around as quickly as it was. So, the other question we got to consider here when we're talking about Miller, Pettersson, who to trade, who stays. So, we know that the Vancouver Canucks and this management group, this coaching staff, values JT a ton. We know, based on their history of trading Bo Horvat and re-signing Miller, they valued him more than their former captain. Now, I think they know. These are not dumb hockey people. I think they all know that the young centerman is the piece to keep. But I also think they're struggling with the fact, are you going to get fair value on JT? And that's on two tracks, Blake. Number one, he's got a no-move clause, so he can really sort of reduce the market and lessen the return. But also, are other teams just approaching this as predators, as scavengers, looking to poach JT because they know of the drama that's going on here? Either trade takes huge stones from the management group. But because he doesn't have the no move, at least not till July, is Elias just the path of least resistance in making this trade? If you do believe in Miller to the level we think they believe in Miller.
The messaging has been so odd on this over the last couple of weeks because I think there's a lot of tea leaves that lead you to believe, no, it's going to be Miller. And then you see some other reports, and they are legitimately shopping both of them. And I mean, it's.
I think more than I don't think people get upset with the word shop. They are gauging the market on both players,
sure,
as they should. That's managers managing. Yeah, that's the job.
Yeah, no,
I don't blame Alvin and Rutherford for one iota of doing that, especially given.
I mean, I listen to phone calls and everybody that's not number 43,
right.
So,
right.
Yeah, I don't think that's too crazy to think that. But
it's not getting fair value on Miller reason enough to trade Pettersson. They go, well, the market on Miller is soft. He's no move. There's only a few teams that he'd be willing to waive for. So let's go ahead.
I'm very skeptical, Matt, that you get market value, true value, in season on either of them.
In season, I agree. Off season, I think you can absolutely hit a home run trade.
Yeah, and if this team makes the playoffs but loses in the first round, it's 6 games relatively quick, and it sort of feels like, oh my gosh, that did not go well. Then May is going to be pretty damn interesting in this market.
Here's what I think. I think they know they should probably resolve this quickly with a trade. I think they know that is going to be exceedingly difficult because of how difficult it is to trade an $11.6 million player in season. I think they will probably resign themselves to playing it out this year. I suspect there'll be a first or a second round playoff exit. And then I think they'll get about the business in the offseason. That's my gut on how I think this is going to go. And if you're listening for the first time or watching for the first time, I wholly reject the notion that you can't win a trade for Elias Pettersson. We just heard it from a former GM. He is a premier player if surrounded by the right group. He's a number one centerman. These guys almost never come on the trade market at age 26. In a cap world, getting multiple pieces for one does not necessarily mean losing the trade, even if you give up the best player. This organization has had terrific pro scouting. I absolutely trust Rutherford and Alvin to make this trade. I think they can make a good one in the offseason if it comes to Pettersson.
Here's the other avenue to a trade here. JT Miller, he's not going to have 4 points every night. But if JT Miller has himself a heater here for 2 to 3 weeks, proves himself to be still a 95-point pace kind of player, I think all of a sudden the Rangers or somebody else say,
yep,
I'm in.
And Elliot Friedman has said that, look, the Rangers are still there. He says the Canucks covet Braden Schneider. their young right shot defenseman.
Which is a little bit interesting how much they pine for this player who has not exactly blossomed as everybody would have hoped. He's fine, but he's not
I don't
blossomed.
think he was ever supposed to be a high point producer, Blake. I think he was more in the Tom Wielander vein than he was in the Quinn Hughes vein. I think you're looking at Braden Schneider as a right shot second pair stopper.
Well, then he better be a stopper, and I don't think he's necessarily got the stats that bill him as a stopper. Like we're talking about a 19-point defenseman here. Like that's below 10 of us.
And I mean his career high in the Western League was 42 though, Blake.
Yeah.
Like so he's an Adam Foote style defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
I think is what they're looking at. And Elliot also reported that Tocchet is the centerman, and we've talked about this. Look, the Rangers trade for Miller. Tocchet, Zibanejad, the centerman. Keandre Miller, the left shot defenseman. Braden Schneider, the right shot defenseman. That's sniffing in the right territory there. Is there a combination with one of those centermen and one of those defensemen for Miller, perhaps in conjunction with something else from the Canucks, that makes sense? Or Hedl as well. We should mention Hedl as well, because Zibanejad's got the no move, and apparently
the interesting thing on Tocchet is if
Hedl got hurt
if he got included, he's got a no move this year as well. For Tocchet does, but he immediately loses his no move starting next year. Mm-hmm. So he becomes flippable if you don't think it's a great fit down the road. He doesn't have any protection going forward. Yep. Or he does have protection. It's not all-encompassing protection.
Yes. Anyways, going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But put it this way. When Elias comes back, whenever Elias comes back here, whether it's tonight, whether it's Friday in Carolina, even Saturday in Toronto, the run-up to the Four Nations and how they play together, I think is going to give a lot of insight.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, that Four Nations pauses the season on February 10th, but it is not a roster freeze like the holiday roster freeze, the 10 days over Christmas. Teams can conduct business during the Four Nations, and then you've got 2 weeks after the Four Nations before the trade deadline. So my sense is on the mechanics of all of this is unless you're bowled over by an offer, you're going to have both number 40 and number 9 as part of your team going into the Four Nations. They, of course, will both, and this will be interesting. Somebody's mentioned to me how many BCI is going to be on that USA-Sweden game at the Four Nations. How do they perform when they're away from each other and surrounded by their countrymen, and then vis-a-vis, and then how do they perform when they're head up against each other?
Well, if you're thinking, though, that there's going to be actual trades consummated during the Four Nations, I bet you there isn't, because I don't think anybody wants to consummate a trade for a guy that then gets injured not bleeding for that crest. So I would bet that you get a lot of trades loaded up during the Four Nations.
That's loaded up. That's where you do your work. That's where you get everything ready to go.
As soon as that trophy is hoisted at the end of the Four Nations, presuming there's a trophy. Have we seen a trophy? I don't know. But as soon as it's concluded, the minute the horn sounds, you press play on the trade, and it's done.
I'm sure Frank Gehry and his team are working on a trophy.
Hard on it.
If not the good folks at Louis Comfort Tiffany.
Oh, Tiffany trophy.
Well, the NHL can afford it.
Rose
right?
gold, then, I guess.
Yeah. Comes in that beautiful robin egg blue box. I'm pouring one out for the Young Stars tournament in Penticton.
Oh, my God. That was weird news, wasn't it?
Well, Rutherford says that they couldn't secure commitments from other teams, and so instead the Canucks and Kraken are going to hold 2-game prospect showcases in Seattle first in 2025 and then in Abbotsford in 2026. My question to them would be, why not go anyways to Penticton?
I guess Kraken fans, it's not as easy for them. To which I would counter then go to Victoria.
Were you really counting on out-of-town fans to make that go? Like, it was a nice offshoot that we saw Oilers and Flames fans.
For a normal franchise, I would say no to that, but it's the Kraken. They're trying to build their fans. They're trying to show fans this is another fun thing that we do. Come see it. I think they want it accessible.
Okay.
Yes. For the Kraken, yes.
Then that was my second question. Why not go somewhere else that extends the brand?
Right. You're already in Abbotsford.
You're in Abbotsford every day. You have daily exposure in Abbotsford.
Victoria, it's a ferry ride for the Seattle fans. To me, that's a lot easier.
And a place that people love to visit, Victoria, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen Butchart Gardens? No, so a little disappointed there. Also because it had become such a fun tradition that was where hockey season kicked off, that it extended that tourism season in the South Okanagan an extra week, couple weeks in some cases.
And for fans that aren't in the interior a lot, there's a lot of Alberta fans in the interior.
Yes,
and I don't just mean tourists. I mean there are dyed-in-the-wool resident fans of the Alberta teams that live basically anywhere east of Merritt. Mm-hmm. Is starting to get into Oil and Flames country.
Well, of course, there was the Boston Pizza Go Oilers Go sign.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. So,
but no, the Oilers crowd would come down from northern Alberta and northern BC, right? Like Prince George East, you got a lot of Oilers fans there. From the East Kootenays and all that, you have some Flames support there. They would come. Anyways, it was a great coming together, I thought, of the Western Canadian teams and their fan bases in a beautiful, picturesque city that had plenty to offer for everyone. Too bad. Let's hope one day the Young Stars can come back to Penticton, or the Young Stars can go elsewhere in the province of British Columbia, extend the Canucks brand, and continue that festival. Time now for today's menu, brought to you by our friends at Greta, and a reminder, Thursday, January 23rd, the Canucks Army crew invites you for an unforgettable night. We'll be at Greta Bar YVR, presented by Fountain Tire, as we watch Vancouver take on Edmonton. This is, of course, a rivalry game, plus exciting giveaways, including hockey tickets, signed memorabilia, jerseys to be won. Doors at 5, puck drop is 6. All this is in support of One Broken Bike, our charitable partner. Each ticket grants you access to all the action. VIP 4-person reservations include entry into the event, a Greta burger, and a beverage, plus a game card so you can play in the awesome arcade. Don't miss out. Secure your spot now. Nationgear.ca for tickets. Nationgear.ca. That's Thursday, January 23rd. Yes?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Finish.
Shorter show today with the 4 o'clock start. Frank Corrado is going to join us, former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst, although I guess we had a second guest than Gillis.
We did. That was because we just talked to Gillis, and because we talked to him about Roberto Luongo. Allow me this, as the Florida Panthers announced that they are going to be the host of the Winter Classic this year.
Is Louis going to finally get his start?
He said on Twitter, playing an outdoor game was always a dream of mine. Melting face emoji.
Bravo, Louis. He still wins Twitter. The sense of humor continues. Bet365, bets of the day time. The segment proudly brought to you by Bet365, Sekeres and Price partner. I picked a future yesterday. Did you win yours? Who did you have? Kraken or no? What did you have yesterday?
I had a hockey game.
Yeah.
I've lost it.
Okay.
Forgot to do the
JT Miller coming off the 4-point night. We talked about it yesterday, whether it's just a single game breakout or a full breakthrough. Will this get him going? You know what? I'm going to take the bait here. JT to score anytime tonight pays plus 325.
I remember what it was. It was San Jose with the upset, which I didn't get.
Yeah.
I'm going with Alex Ovechkin, not to score, so don't accuse me of being a traitor here and cheering on the other guy, because this can happen without him scoring. Shots on goal, and you have to go pretty high to get some cheddar here for Alex Ovechkin shots on goal. 5. But then you do get a really nice number.
5.
Plus 205.
What? It's only plus 205 at 5?
Here's the thing.
How many is he averaging?
4.5. 4.5. So it is right there. It is right there.
Yeah.
And I think the Canucks, with what they've been allowing of late, I think they're a little susceptible to the grade 8. So Alex Ovechkin with 5 shots on goal at plus 205.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Frank Corrado coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Ben Moss, with a history dating back more than 100 years. Proudly Canadian-owned, operated. They've got Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, large selections thereof, payment plans to suit your needs. 5 locations in British Columbia: Victoria, Chilliwack, Abbotsford, Coquitlam Center, and Willowbrook and Langley. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. And it's time to welcome back, and for the first time in 2025, former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst. Happy New Year, Frank Corrado.
What is it, January 8th? I think we're, it's run its course at this point. Happy New Year. But,
really?
Well, okay, I haven't seen you guys for a while, so I'll say it, but in public and stuff, I'm not saying it anymore.
This is the Larry David episode.
Very curb of you.
Yeah.
I can't believe nice guy Frank Corrado is taking my holiday greeting.
I, for one, am shocked.
Yeah.
I, for one, am shocked.
Yeah. You're not the heel
I'll
on
put
this
it to
show,
you this way.
Corrado.
I'll put it to you this way. I'll send a bunch of emails today because I got some work to do. I won't put Happy New Year on any of those emails starting today.
Savage.
Yeah.
Absolutely savage. Yeah. Single-digit January. Wow. That's a hard line, man.
All right. Well, no wishes for 2025.
I just feel like I was kicked in the nuts, but all right, that's fine. That's fine.
Frank, the Vancouver Canucks are teetering here on the final playoff spot, and we're asking on our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, are injuries a valid excuse for this Canucks season? What says you?
I mean, no. Like, what are we talking about? Like, every team has injuries. And that was always the thing in Vancouver for years. The year-end press conference would roll around, and what was one of the first things that was going to get said? Well, we had a lot of injuries this year.
Except for last year. Last year was the exception.
Right. And they were, they were really good last year. But everything went their way. Shooting percentage was really high, save percentage, all that kind of stuff. But they're valid, but like, what's your goal with, like, so you just want to say it feels like a cop out if you're just going to say, well, we missed the playoffs by 1 point, but we were injured. There's enough there. Like, I think there's enough there that you can still have a good result this season. I don't know. Let me state the case. Let
me state the case. They are in a playoff spot right now. They've got a little bit of wiggle room, in fact, because of tiebreakers and such. They're hanging on to a playoff spot, and they've had all of their top players. Every single one of their top players has missed significant time this season, and they're still missing Demko, Pettersson, Hronek. So, again, if you're of the ilk that believes that they are a valid excuse, you're going to say, we're in the playoffs and all this has happened. If we're ever healthy, my God, we'll be just fine. Yeah. That's going to be the argument.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and you can't, like, I don't want to minimize the fact that they have missed all these players for significant periods of times. And the biggest one is obviously Demko. Like, thank God Lankinen has played as well as he had, because, like, it's a little it's hyperbolic to say, but if Lankinen wasn't in the picture here, what you're not talking about being in the playoffs. You're talking about, like, being where, I don't know, Utah, Anaheim, like, that's
6 to 8 points less, I would think.
Yes.
Talking about where the Rangers are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the it would be the Western Conference equivalent of where the Rangers are in the East. So that's the most substantial one. The fact that you've been able to weather that, I think, is the biggest story for me. You know, the other guys that have come and gone, like whether it was Miller missing time or like Pettersson played well when Miller was gone. Now Pettersson's out. Miller has the 4-point night. Quinn Hughes would have been the one with the most significant impact outside of Demko, and you can really like you watch those, like you say, okay, this blue line really struggles without him, and not to mention not having Hronek. Like that's something that just doesn't get talked about anymore because he's been gone for so long. So I don't want to minimize any of those things, but I just think with the team that had, you know, aspirations of something greater than, you know, just sneaking into the playoffs, I don't know if you could just say, well, injuries, and you go like this and you say, we'll see you next year.
Well, especially since, and you hit on it, that blue line.
Yeah.
You know, there's still that blue line.
Okay, you're forcing me into devil's advocate. I don't think anybody's would be, on that side of the ledger would say, wash my hands, see you next year. I think what the point would be is the season's not over, and we're about to get healthy. And so we can still be that team with the high expectations. There's still runway left, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And you kind of just need everyone to live up to what they're supposed to be at that point, right? Like once everyone comes back, then the excuses get eliminated. And then whatever, you know, outside of Vancouver, it's all anyone wants to talk about is the drama between Pettersson and Miller. Like you guys live it every day, but now it's like, it's national news every day now, which, you know, I think you guys look at it and say, well, welcome to the party. You know, so that's something that has to rectify itself one way or another. It is interesting, though, like the blue line, and Matt, you bring this up, like, why wouldn't Eric Brandstrom play against Montreal? I just, with a blue
He's not
I know,
tall, Frank.
I know,
He's
I know,
not tall.
and I
we
get
discriminate against short.
But I get that, you know, Hughes is back, and that's great. And maybe you don't want two small guys, but I'm watching some of the stuff. I'm like, Montreal's sneaky a 4-line team now. And so, you know, and they forecheck really well. Like that's kind of been their MO, their bread and butter. So wouldn't you want another guy that can move the puck and maybe bypass a little bit of that forecheck pressure? Like I know Montreal forechecks because I watch them every game, and that's the team I have to be closest to. But if you're coaching, you know that as well because you're doing the pre-scout and you have all the analytics and you know all the advanced stats, and you're like, okay, if I know this team forechecks, call it 3 lines forecheck really well, because I don't think the second line forechecks very well there, but they're getting better. If I know 3 lines forecheck on the other team, like, and I'm like, I gotta have someone that can get me out of my own zone, but that wasn't the case. And I'll tell you what, like I call a lot of those Habs games, and I get the Sport Logic reports after, and even when they win, rarely do they out expected goals a team, out slot shots a team, out high danger a team, and like sweeping across the board. It was resounding Montreal. So that tells me that like Vancouver was in their zone a lot and couldn't break the puck out.
And the too small D thing would concern me if the other 4 guys weren't 6'7". Like you've got 4 guys that can make up for 2 smaller defensemen. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Don't get it.
You may have rebuffed our New Year's greetings, Corrado, but the fact of the matter is we haven't spoken to you in a few weeks, and you hit on Miller and Pettersson, so I am obliged to now ask you the Miller or Pettersson question. What do you think what do you think they should do? What do you think is most likely in the Miller-Pettersson saga?
I think if you were going to trade one of them, it's a no-brainer. Like, you're moving on from the 32-year-old and you're keeping the 26-year-old. Like, just that alone, I think, you know, should be the biggest weight factor in the decision. Like, how long are you going to have this guy? And I was talking to someone on a different show this morning. Like, you almost have to do a little bit of the history lesson, which you guys would know well. When Horvat was still here, Miller was made the priority at that point. Right. And we know how that went down and how Horvat felt about it and how it looked. Optically, it looked weird, you know, that you weren't going to prioritize your captain and a guy who's been there, very beloved for so long. Now, you're in another situation where you can ask yourself, okay, if one of these guys has to go, Are you going to double down and prioritize Miller again and move on from Elias Pettersson? And if you do that, I think you're openly admitting that you hate the contract you signed him to. You don't think he's going to live up to it, and you're just saying, we need to get out of this contract, because there's no logical long-term reason why you would keep a 32-year-old over a 26-year-old who has the chance to be, a 100-point player on a regular basis. Regardless of what you think how he's played this year, there's obviously factors at play in that, but I think on the surface, if you looked at those facts alone, you got to think, like, you're keeping the younger guy.
Can I would like to counterpoint, and here's the thing. I think they believe Elias uncoachable, that they haven't been able to reach him in 2-3 years here. And I also think they have doubts about whether Elias can be a frontline player on a Stanley Cup champion.
Yeah. If they were to move on from that contract, I think they'd be openly admitting all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So would that, if you were in Rutherford Alvin's shoes, would that not be reason enough to prioritize Miller?
I guess you'd have to think, okay, what am I getting that keeps me a Stanley Cup frontline team? You know what I mean? Like, am I going to go from having Miller to like this black hole as my second line center? And,
no, got to get a center.
Like,
got to get a center back. They prioritize center. The reports are out there, so it would have to be a replacement.
They're probably going through a million different situations over a whiteboard and saying, okay, if we move this guy and this is the return, this is what we're going to look like. I get, I guess what I'm saying is, why did you sign him to that big of a deal at that much money if you had those kinds of doubts about him?
Right, and I think the answer is threefold. Number one, you were having a hell of a season.
Yeah.
Right. You didn't want to. You didn't want to tear the team up when you were having a hell of a season. Number two was to protect the asset. To make sure that he didn't get to restricted free agency. And then I guess number three, if you believe in, Carolina's making a call and it's offering, a trade that you would otherwise, taking a look at.
Yeah.
That gave you a pressure point to re-sign Elias and get him to the table, because remember, he didn't want to be at the table. He was like, wait till the offseason, wait till the offseason. Now, the other thing, another counterpoint I'd like you to take on, Miller with his no move is probably going to hinder the return you get for him, whereas Elias with no trade protection, at least till July 1st, is theoretically available to 31 markets.
Yeah. No, I get that. And that's obviously something that has to be considered when you're doing this type of thing, because you don't want to get boxed into a situation where you can't get a good enough return. I guess if the thing with Pettersson that I think if you're the coaching staff and the management, you wanted to see a little bit is, can you be like the alpha that goes nose to nose, right, in like a really tough moment? I think last year in the playoffs, it felt like for whatever reason, whether it was banged up, he got pushed out a lot, right? And that would be a significant concern. But to that, I would say, what is Pettersson's day-to-day like as a Vancouver Canuck without JT Miller there? Like, what is it like for him going to practice every day, going to games every day, without having the personality and whatever that presence is that we don't really know and we're not privy to? Like, what does that do for the guy? Does that free him up? Like, does he suddenly feel like there's a weight lifted off his shoulders? If we're weighing all these things, I think that's something that has to be considered as well. And if there's someone in that management group that really believes in Pettersson, I think they're bringing that to the table and saying, like, I'm willing to bet that if Miller and whatever he does, and says to the guy, if he's not there every day, I think we're going to see a totally different or just a totally freed up Pettersson.
And you bring up a great point, because Blake and I have gone through it, that if they do manage to move one, especially in season here, there are consequences, right? Like there are. Well, first of all, one of the things I think they have to evaluate, and we saw it with the 4-point night, is can JT get back to being the same player he was? Can you put that genie back in the bottle? Would moving Pettersson allow that genie to go back into the bottle? And then on the flip side, as you note, with Pettersson, does it all go away, or is the damage done? That basically, which relationship is easier to repair, and can either relationship get back to the 100% relationship it was with the club?
Well, and a big part of that,
of
Frank, that I think people have been slow to get to, and it just seems to be hitting the road now, is how much of this is on Rick Tocchet? How much of this is on the coach to keep these guys from running the asylum? And not to mention just the X's and O's of what we're seeing don't seem to be working, and the adjustments don't seem to be there from the head coach as well. Yeah. The contract is running out here at the end of the year. Do the Canucks have a decision to make, or does that Coach of the Year award give him yet another year at the very least in your mind?
Well, the Coach of the Year award feels like a little bit of a curse recently, doesn't it? Like so many guys that have been in the running for that or have won that got fired, shortly after. Just one quick thing on those two guys. I think there's also a factor of there's certain guys in the room that might side with Miller on the thing. Then there's certain guys in the room that might side with Pettersson on the thing. Like, it kind of depends who your guys are, who you go to dinner with, who you talk to the most. So when one guy leaves, do you have 5 or 6 guys that were on the other side that kind of resent everything, and they're like, I can't believe you traded Art? Like, something else to think about that I don't think necessarily gets brought up enough. The thing about Tocchet is I feel like he's one of those coaches that, I don't want to say can take it or leave it, but he can kind of write his own ticket in a way like, if
he's not desperate for the job. Is that what you're saying?
If he wants to, he'll call TNT and say,
Right.
Guys, I'll come do 1 game a week and I'll make my $1 million again. Or,
And I'll be undefeated.
I don't know what he was making, but you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's always that. And it's like, if this becomes too stressful, or if I feel like I'm running a babysitting service for 2 guys that can't figure it out, like, check, please. I'm going to live a very happy, cushy life, do 1 game a week, and, I'll fly in and out of the Atlanta airport and deal with whatever nonsense is happening there, as I had a delay through there recently. So I have no experience with that. I'm not speaking from firsthand experience. No, but like I feel like that's the thing with Tocchet, right? So listen, if you don't want to have him back, I think he'll be fine. If you want to have him back, I'm sure he'll put everything into it. And we talked about this before the break, right? Like, and you mentioned all the injuries. We talked about all the injuries. I think a coach does have to adjust when you have injuries. You can't, you kind of sometimes just have to play the cards you're dealt. You have to play the horses that you have. And I think he's maybe guilty of dumbing it down a lot, but he probably had to dumb it down a lot based on who was in and out of the lineup at any given time.
Well, and Frank, we started because he bemoaned the lack of offensive zone time the other day. And of course, as you know, he uses that as a defensive tactic. We're going to keep puck possession to A, try and create that grade A chance, but B, also so that they don't have the puck. He started bemoaning that the other night. And Blake and I are sitting here going, that's because you don't have the guys to play puck possession, offensive zone time. We're wondering if he has to move a little bit more to the Brindamore model and just get pucks on net.
Oh, my God.
As a way to float offense here, especially with Pettersson out, and we don't...
Or stop with the dump and chase. If you're going to preach dump and chase, you've got to go get the
You go all in on it, right? Like Carolina, you bring up Carolina has gone all in on just like, it's a high flip and it's puck pursuit. And it's like off the glass, and it's just like that's... But they're not caught in the middle on it. And Carolina's actually struggling right now. Like, this is kind of weird to see from them. They're usually such a consistent team during the regular season. They haven't played well on the road. Vancouver hasn't played well at home for most of the year. But you're right. Like, at least Carolina, it's like we're just all in on that. And it's like the Lil Jon song where it's like shots, 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 shots. Like, that's just, it's constantly playing on a loop if you watch Carolina play. And so that's very different than what Vancouver does. But... and the other thing, Vancouver produces nothing off the rush. And, it was a couple games ago I'm watching on the weekend, and I'm like, there's like one shot, but there's never that second opportunity. It was just like consistently one and done over. So, that's, I think, why he would be criticizing the lack of offensive zone time because at the very least, if you're not going to have the most skilled lineup iced and you're going to have some guys that you think can go get it for you, well, then go get it and start it all over again and start that sequence again where shoot it, retrieve it, set it up again. Shoot it, retrieve it, set it up again. Like, you just haven't really seen a lot of that from them. And at the very least, if you have some fast wingers, with some size, you should be able to do that.
Which will wind us all the way back to our first point of this whole thing. When you have Filip Hronek and Quinn Hughes playing half the hockey game, you can play a puck possession game. The blue line, and because when they want to reset, they'll just drag everybody back through the neutral zone, then they'll re-enter, and you get to start all over again. Without those two guys, they've been forced into a different different power shift, right? So
it's a very different looking team without those two guys. And that's, I think that's why it's a little puzzling. Like, I get he's not tall, but we talked about it. Like, if you got a guy that can move the pill, like, I don't know, why take him out? But I guess you're trying to play a certain way, you're trying to win a certain way, and they're still in the playoffs at this point. So it's not, it's not all doom and gloom. The world is not ending for the Vancouver Canucks. If anything, it should be, more on a bright note because Pettersson's going to be coming back soon, and hopefully Demko not far after that.
All right, last question, Corrado. Canucks in Toronto Saturday.
I'm going to the game.
Chances that Elias Pettersson gets asked about a desire one day to play in Toronto,
or just that he's playing for the Leafs on Saturday.
I'll tell you the question.
I'll sit back and listen.
I'll tell you the question. This is the classic one that gets asked when players roll through Toronto. Hey, Matt Sekeres. So what have you made of Mitch Marner's season so far? Or what do you like about Austin Matthews' game? That is a classic. When a star player on another team rolls through Toronto, what does their star player think about the Leaf star players?
Really, the Toronto Media Corps is truly missing Joe Thornton for this because, as you know, Jolly Joe would regale on that stuff all day long.
Dude,
love the attention. And then they could say, Joe Thornton said.
Guys know, though. Guys know when they're rolling through Toronto, they drop a little nugget there every once in a while. John Cooper's notorious for it. Brad Marchand loves doing it. Drew Doughty. Drew Doughty does it all the time.
Classic. He's the OG on that one, if you ask me.
Yeah.
No,
because he gets
really,
it once a year. Once a year, he rolls through Toronto.
Really, John Tavares should hold a workshop, a seminar on all this, because it was probably 10 years of Tavares with the Islanders going to Toronto before he ever signed there that had to deal with all of these. The jammies.
Yeah.
Really, the jammy seminar. Here's how to deal with the media when rolling through Toronto. A guide for visiting players.
If you said that John Tavares should be running the media seminar on how to handle the Toronto media, if you said that in Toronto, you would get some weird looks because a lot of the stuff that he has said over the years has not been overly appreciated. It's basically so many times he said, it's a learning experience. Yeah, we got to learn from it. He said it for 7 years. It's been a learning experience.
Here's the thing.
I honestly forget that he plays for the Leafs.
He's having a good. Here's the other
He's having a great year. He's having a very good year.
Frank, they seem to be learning. It's a pretty good season.
Yeah, 7 years, usually you become a doctor.
That's a lot of, as we're talking, we call them learning lessons.
Yeah, learning lessons. Yeah, very good learning lessons. Yep. Yeah. Okay, thank you for this. Have a marvelous week, and we'll catch up next
And I don't
month.
give a flying F. Happy New Year. Frank Corrado.
Happy New Year
to the Corrados in 2025.
Happy New Year. Sincerely. Love you guys. I'll be boots on the ground at the game Saturday.
Please. File us some audio. Okay. Jeff could use it.
See ya.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Sekeres and Price from the Historic Wall Center. And if you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, make it a staycation. Book your stay here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres and Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. You can text the show 778-402-9680. Email live at sekeresandprice.com. All of it to the Great Clips inbox. I am overdue at Great Clips. I'm getting there next week. We'll see you. Great Clips at the Davie Street location. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
Shawn White, our boy, your boy, the Lower Mainland's boy, the pride of White Rock. He turns 40 in October, and he has signed a contract extension with the British Columbia Lions.
CFL kickers, that's still young.
He stood to be a free agent next month. He, of course, was the West Division nominee for Special Teams, Most Outstanding Special Teams Player. He is 9 points back of longtime CFL kicker Terry Baker for 10th on the all-time scoring list. He, of course, has become the league's most accurate kicker in history at 88.4%. Now, of course, he's going to have to maintain that. And he's been CFL and West Division All-Star for the last couple of years. Set that club record last year with 29 consecutive field goals. Made good on 29 consecutive field goals to eclipse Paul McCallum for the club record of 47 in a row. I was looking at it. He would have to, because he missed games earlier in his career when he was kind of not the full-time kicker here in BC, and then he had some injuries and missed some games when he was in Alouette and in Edmonton. He cannot get to Louis'
points.
Well, games. Louis Pasaglia played more than 400 Canadian Football League games.
Did he play? What was his final age? 47?
46.
46.
Louis played from 76 to 2000, 25 seasons and more than 400 games. Whitey's only at like 220. But if he played, could he play 5, 6, 7 more years?
I think he played 5 for sure.
Because he's getting better. That's the thing.
Well, he's more accurate. That's the only thing I was going to say. And he's not short in terms of...
He's not the Titanic leg in the league.
No,
I'm not sure he's the guy I would want out there for the 60-yarder, but...
In 2 years' time, you're going to start to ask, okay, because I'm sure his distance will go down with each year past the age of 40 to some degree. Are you missing out on the modern leg that may not be as accurate as he is, particularly from distance, but can rip off a 55-yarder relatively easily?
And if I know football coaches, and shout out intern Nick here, they will take the guy who is automatic from inside of 50 over the guy who's a little more likely to make
it's probably true
the distance field.
Because really, if you're not close enough for that, that's on you, coach. If you didn't get close enough, that's your fault.
Hey, coach, sack up and go for it on third down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And how about this, Tom Pelissero? Multiple NFL teams have inquired about Bill Belichick and whether he would reconsider his move to North Carolina and be interested in their vacancy, including, I guess they've made up, perhaps the roast was a good way to get them back together, the Las Vegas Raiders and minority owner Tom Brady, who recently spoke with his old coach, gauging his interest in coming back. Jets, Saints, Bears, Patriots, Jaguars, Raiders are your openings there. Belichick's contract at Carolina, believe it or not, they're not dumb down there in Chapel Hill. They saw this coming. It includes a $10 million buyout if he leaves prior to June 1st, 2025. So basically, if Bill Belichick leaves Carolina at the altar without coaching a game, somebody has to pay $10 million to get him out of that contract.
It's June 1st, 2025. He still doesn't have he just needs to get to the summer.
Oh, right. What am I thinking?
That was the peculiar part of this whole thing is he can still do all this, hand the reins to his son, and never coach a game in North Carolina. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, so he can never coach the game, but it's going to cost them $10 million, the NFL team that hires him.
Prior to that date, if they hire him July 1.
Yeah, but they're not going to hire in July. The hiring season's now.
But if it's wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
You think there would be an NFL team that'd be willing to go through the offseason and then pop on Belichick in June or July?
June 10th?
Really?
June 10th? Is that crazy?
I think that's crazy, Blake.
It's a little crazy.
Yeah, it's very crazy.
But the whole thing is crazy. The whole structure is kind of crazy.
What I don't get, so I heard Mike Lombardi, who is a Belichick confidant and is the general manager now of the Carolina football program. I heard an interview with him about why Bill took this job, and he basically said it was twofold. Number one, Bill's an educator at heart. He loves teaching and coaching football at that level, more so than dealing, as we all know, dealing with the press and all the things that he considers superfluous about the head coaching role in the NFL. So that appealed to him, the ability to be able to coach 18 to 22-year-old young men and learn them football, if you will. Secondly, Lombardi said, as you know, Bill comes in with a full program. He's not just about coaching. It's a full program. And at the NFL level, that means he's got to be the full football final say chief. Not a lot of room for other front office people. And modern NFL front offices are constructed with different personnel guys. Not to mention the fact Bill did not do very well with evaluating and drafting talent towards the end in New England, which made people think, look, he needs to work with a personnel guy. He can't be, the grand poobah. So I understood it from that level, but also you knew NFL teams were going to come calling. Like, you knew there were going to be a number of openings, and you knew that there would be some NFL teams there that look at it and go, God, what we really need here is a Bill Belichick-like figure. Like, this was very foreseeable, was it not?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean...
It almost seems like Belichick panicked a little bit and was like, okay, I'm going to go take this job because what if the NFL doesn't come asking in?
Unless he really did just get the vibes that, maybe he just didn't wait long enough. Maybe the vibes were, I'm too old. Maybe people don't take me seriously anymore.
And I think that was the case. I mean, that was some of the reporting. Now, look, mixing and matching here, it's obviously not going to be the Patriots. I'd be very surprised if it's the Jets because Woody Johnson, of course, he once resigned as head coach of the Jets, didn't want any part of that organization. Saints, I'd be surprised. Bears, we know he loves the history of the game. Jaguars, I don't think he wants to deal with the owner. So maybe it's only the Raiders here of these openings. Who knows? An enormous MLS trade today where this guy believes the Seattle Sounders have gotten a whole lot better. And
they're certainly not getting any worse. He's the modern franchise player for FC Dallas.
What's his name?
Jesus Ferreira. They're one of the oldest franchises in MLS. So I hesitate to say he is the all-time FC Dallas player, but that's the sort of company that Jesus Ferreira keeps. U.S. men's national team player. This is Mr. FC Dallas currently. Mm-hmm. And Seattle just goes and acquires him for Leo Chu and a lot of GAM, 2.3 a GAM, so they can go out and get a new franchise player. They've got
GAM, general allocation money.
Basically, additional cap space is the best way to.
But the point here is that other teams are out there conducting player personnel.
Yeah.
And Vancouver Whitecaps FC have still not announced a head coach.
Now, I think, what Axel Schuster might say is, remember,
that doesn't prevent us from doing personnel.
Well, I think he'll also say
we weren't going to be involved in this ball game anyways.
He'll also say Stuart Armstrong played 8 games for us last year. Like, he's our big off-season move. It just happened a little bit earlier. And he's a big piece of the puzzle. We haven't seen him go through a training camp and all that sort of stuff.
But right now you're weaker. You've lost Pico and you've lost other guys who you're not bringing back. So as we sit here right now on January 8th, you're weaker than the team that lost in the first round of the playoffs for the second straight year.
Yeah. Yeah, so either they've got something up their sleeve here and they're just going to be a little late to it. And again, it's a pretty long training camp. I'm not panicked on January 8th, but I think I might be on January 25th. So, that's 2 weeks to get a coach?
Well, I think they're absolutely going to have a coach by then.
Yes.
The question is going to be, for me, the question is, has not having a coach prevented you from doing anything personnel-wise? have you been trigger shy because you don't want to pop on a player that you don't know the new coach or one of the three candidates would have time for?
I see Glass City FC, one of the internet sleuths for the Whitecaps, has pieced together that Ryan Gold, Stuart Armstrong, and fellow Scotsman Johnny Russell, who's a free agent, have followed each other on social media and such.
Is Russell a midfielder? Or?
No, he's a winger striker.
Okay. Well, that would be good.
Yeah. Yeah. Older,
As
but
somebody who's a quarter Scottish and planning on a burn supper later this month, I would absolutely love
Scots
to see a Scottish trio not only driving the offense of this team, but doing all the interviews.
Does make it a little more fun.
Oh, the accents.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Ariel, Joshua, and Nicoletta, the three newest Botchford Project Fellows, announced by our friend Kat Botchford yesterday. Of course, JPAD and Drance and a bunch of people work on the Botchford Project. Kat tweets, loved your applications and pitches. It was tough choosing from so many strong candidates. For those not selected this time, I encourage you to reapply next season. Keep shining. No Josh a little bit.
No Ariel a little bit.
Yeah, Joshua Ray, the Area 51 Sportsnet and Terminal City FC podcasts. See him at Whitecaps games. So congrats, Josh. Very pleased to see that for you. You know Ariel as well.
Well, she writes for Canucks Army.
Oh, right.
She's a good follow on Twitter, so I've
excellent.
So
bravo.
A little bit.
Congratulations to all three of you, and love that Jason's legacy continues on in this city via the Botchford Project. Last bit of business here, penultimate bit of business. Poll question results from Tuesday. We asked you on the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, were you bothered by the lack of response after Caden Gooley's hit on Jonathan Lekramaki? Yes or no, the people said?
No.
Correct.
62.
Right on the number.
No, really? Okay.
Ron, nope. Clean hits don't require a big response. Yeah, we discussed that yesterday. Chris, not bothered by there being no fight or response after a clean hit, more bothered by the fact that I knew there would be no response because this team rarely sticks up for each other. Also, Desharnais getting pushed around by Gallagher and doing nothing, thought he was our muscle. Steven, best response is to hit their best player hard. Canucks did that. Miller had a big hit on Hudson.
Yep.
Caulfield got hit too. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. I mistakenly said Canucks below the playoff bar. They were on the final playoff spot.
Hassan and Burnaby from Monday, when discussing the Vikings QB situation, trading JJ wouldn't make sense when they could franchise tag Darnold and have the young QB learn the ropes.
Yeah, so that's the third option. That's one of the options available to Minnesota. You can franchise tag Darnold on a 1-year deal, basically force him back without a contract extension,
and
play it out another year, see if he can continue on, and keep both quarterbacks.
He also
the Vikings are also very draft pick poor. I want to say they only have 4 or 5 picks, so it may behoove them to make a trade for McCarthy if they can recapture a bunch of picks, because there are some who believe that McCarthy would be pretty high up the pecking order with Cam Ward of Miami, Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sun from Colorado amongst this quarterback class. I want to say McCarthy went like 11th or 12th overall last year. There are some that believe he would be a top 5 pick this year, and that teams like the Giants, who might miss out on the top 2, might be willing to move picks to Minnesota to effectively get a first-round quarterback just a year later.
If you can replenish your lines and all that sort of stuff with other draft picks, that might make your team better immediately. And also Sakaris citing XG and goals saved courtesy of JFresh. The data is actually from Top Down Hockey. JFresh just makes the visuals for it.
All right. Good to know. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. We are live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. Friday show, another reminder, going to go at 10 a.m. because the early start in Carolina and another early start the next day. So join us 10 a.m. on Friday. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.